Hey there, and thank you for tuning in to this edition of While We Were Working. It's the show that helps you become a better people leader in your business. We've got a awesome show for you today. We're talking about independent contractors and some new changes that are happening to laws that you need to know about no matter where you are in the United States. And then we're going to talk about a question that comes up quite a bit here at Jumpstart, and that's when should your business take HR seriously? Is it an employee size? Is it a length of time in business? We're going to chat about it in detail. And when I say we, I'm talking about myself, Joey Price, as well as Sommer, our consulting practice manager here at Jumpstart, and my awesome co-host. So, Sommer, how's it going? Thanks for being here as always.
Thanks, Joey, and thanks everybody for joining our show. It's another great week, and it looks like we have some amazing topics to talk about. You know, it's a new year. There's a lot happening in the people leader and small business space, and well, I'm here for it all and look forward to our discussions today.
Yeah, awesome. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's start with Sommer, if you don't mind, setting up our While We Were Working segment and talk about this article from HR Executive Magazine.
All right. Well, let's get it started. The While We Were Working segment of our show is where Joey and I scour the web. We read magazines, blogs, anything we can get our hands on. We try to pick something that catches our eye that we think our listeners and our followers would enjoy hearing us speak about. And of course, with the new year, Joey, there's so many new rules. And even for us, it's hard to keep track of. And, you know, this is the space that we work in, but we do a good job at it. And I love sharing this information with those that follow our show so that, you know, maybe if they didn't quite hear that, you know, something might be impacting their business, we're here to help them out with it.
Yeah. And no matter the size of your business, this conversation is super important for independent contractors because whether you're a small business starting out and your initial response is, let's grow with contractor work, or if you are a large business and you want to expand your capabilities, maybe acquire talent quickly, and you may say, let's reach out to independent contractors. I think this new law change is incredibly important to pay attention to because not only is it an HR issue, but it can be a financial one too. If there are fines and fees associated with non-compliance here. So, do we want to jump into maybe some context around this new Department of Labor independent contractor rule? What is it there to combat? And maybe even the 6 factors of the economic realities test that comes into play.
All right, let's do it. And if you're curious which article we're talking about today, I mean, there's a ton of information about this change all over the web, but I happen to reference an article that came out on January 19th in HR Executive Magazine. And the title of this article is called New Independent Contractor Rule Signals a Busy Year for Compliance. And, well, I think that's saying it quite simply. But in case you missed it, on January 11th, the DOL, Department of Labor, did issue a new rule on independent contractors. And Joey, you and I talk about this a lot. We talk about it along with our clients about, well, first, like, why do these types of laws even exist? And if you think about some of the impact that classifying a worker as an independent contractor versus an employee, the impact that may have, there's quite a lot of benefits that are lost to a worker if they aren't classified as an employee. So that's kind of at the heart of it. And now what we see in practice sometimes is that some companies, either for the sake of maybe not knowing the difference in these classifications, or, you know, maybe they started out with contractors because they were very small and they thought that that was the right arrangement for them. Perhaps at some point realizing that maybe that's not the right classification and then converting them to employees. So if any of those sound familiar, you're going to want to listen up so that we can talk through a little bit more about this new rule. And Joey, I'm sure you would agree. There's a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it could be its own podcast. It could be its own masterclass. In fact, this topic isn't new to me. I believe when there was a lot of conversation around whether Uber drivers and Lyft drivers are employees versus contractors, I was on a show called The American Law Journal, and we talked through the merits of allowing independent contractors to be contractors versus the employment route. So that was several years ago. But yes, to your point, it is incredibly important because if you think about the different vantage points from this conversation, usually, or maybe not, I won't say usually, but many people who go the independent contractor route do so because they wish to have their own fate in their own hands and perhaps build some form of business enterprise. So that gives them flexibility, ability to have their earning potential in their hands. And so that's a one vantage point. But for the employer, they may be looking at an independent contractor from the standpoint of we will make the determination to grow our team with an independent contractor because it's some words I hear people say is it's simple, it's easy. I pay a bill rate. There aren't the additional benefits, fees, so on and so forth. Um, but what the Department of Labor is looking to do is to cut through all of that and have a clear test, a clear frame of reference of whether a laborer is truly an independent contractor or if they are an employee. And because the employees come with certain rights and responsibility, independent contractors come with certain rights and responsibility, and never the two shall meet. So when we think about, this year, it's supposed to be better for the economy than last year, and people moving around. It's important to pay attention to how you are growing your team, adding members to your team, adjusting your team, and doing it with the right reference point for employees versus contractors.
Yes, and it's definitely a topic of hot discussion. And just to kind of demonstrate that, the prior rule that was in effect uh, kind of goes back to 2021. And for those of you that maybe aren't so close as to the process, I'm going to simplify it. There's essentially a comment period right before these laws go into effect. And it gives, you know, really the opportunity for folks to provide their feedback on it before it goes into effect. And I saw a fun fact, Joey, that there was over 55,000 comments received on this before it went into effect over a 61-day period.
Hmm. That's
That's pretty
almost
wild, right?
that's almost 1,000 a day. That's pretty crazy.
Right, great math. But the reason I mention that is because there's a lot of opinions about this. It can have a real impact on workers and companies. But at the heart of it, again, I kind of draw us back to like, well, why does this exist and why has it changed? So, at the heart of it, it exists to ensure that there are stronger worker rights, and that there are not individuals being misclassified to ultimately have, what they would consider like wage theft. Individuals not receiving essentially like the whole package of benefits that an employee would. So it's really to protect workers The acting secretary of labor, Julie Sue, emphasized that this rule emphasizes the significance of protecting workers, especially those at risk for exploitation. And when it comes back to companies, it's like making sure you get this right is not only a legal, but it's a moral and ethical consideration as well.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree with that. Especially when you talk about individuals being taken for granted or taken advantage of, rather. You could think about, with an independent contracting arrangement. Let's hypothetically say someone goes to a cleaning company or individual who cleans and says, "We are going to give you, as an independent contractor, $500 a week to clean our spaces." But that $500 per week could result in being paid out, for example, less than minimum wage in that area, if the number of hours that the person has to work to clean um, is more than what the minimum wage would be in the area. And then on top of that, you're giving this $500 wage per week, but that doesn't factor in uh, transportation to and from the location, or cleaning supplies, or training, and safety measures, safety precautions. So when you say take advantage of it surely is in a position where folks could take advantage of people, not just from a cleaning standpoint, but even at higher level roles in an organization or different business functions. Uh, so yeah, the Department of Labor is attempting to protect the American worker.
Yeah. I appreciate you explaining that because I think that really breaks it down incredibly well on why this is such a hot topic. And to give you a little bit of a background, and then we can dive into the six factors. The 2021 rule never became fully effective because the Department of Labor said that it improperly weighted certain factors, like when you kind of go through the criteria, and that this new final rule, it consists of a six-factor, what they call economic realities test, to ultimately determine if the worker is economically dependent on the potential employee uh, for work, or is the business or is in business for themselves. So, to simplify that, the old rule, there was different criteria and they had different weights, but the new rule is criteria with like having to look at it in totality without one necessarily weighing over the other. But here's the kicker before we dive into that, Joey. This is the part that I really laughed at. So I got through reviewing all of the criteria, but then at the very bottom, it says, and additional factors may be relevant.
Well,
And I thought that's clear as day, right?
or as I've heard it said sometimes, that's clear as mud, clear as
Yeah,
mud.
like
So, it
clear
sounds
as
like they're
mud.
going down a path of clarity, but then left it open, sort of like those job descriptions that say other duties as a side, right?
That is exactly it. And I know why they put it there, but I thought, okay, this is great. We have all of this clarity now. Follow these steps. You should get to a pretty clear answer. But then they're also saying additional factors may be relevant. So it's well, how like I need guidance. How do I consider these? So still is going to require really careful analysis. But how about we dive into those six factors and share with our listeners?
Let's go for it.
Cool, cool. So I'll start off the first one. The first one is opportunity for profit or loss depending on managerial skill.
That one, I like to think of the and this is without, deep context of the actual ruling itself, but the premise of opportunity for profit or loss depending on managerial skill to me means, is this person simply clocking in and clocking out, or is this person using independent judgment so that they can uh, earn more revenue for their efforts? An
Mhm.
example here might be the big debate around, you know, rideshare or food delivery. And the question is, do individuals who are listed as independent contractors pass this test of um, being able to think independently or make calls independently for profit or loss? And this is a new ruling, so this is going to mean all of these rideshare companies now have to comply with this test. I don't know that a rideshare group is going to be able to argue that their drivers or their delivery folks independently make managerial judgment calls because so much of what is done is through the app, right? And so that's going to be a tough hurdle just out of the gate for a rideshare company or delivery group to win. But I could see that playing out in other places too. But for brevity and for us to move on, let's go to the next one. The next one is investments by the worker and potential employers. So
Mhm.
just real quickly on that one, I think that is more along the lines of investing in the goods and or the products that go into delivery of the service or products, and whether the employer is making significant investments. So, example, corporate settings. Um, did you assign them a laptop? Did you assign them software to use? For example, do they have to use your Microsoft Word or are they free to use their Google? Um, are they required to go to your offices or can they work independently from wherever they choose? Because the company obviously is paying for the office. So those are some things around there that I can think of. But Summer, if you have any context you'd add around too, or if you want to jump to the third one.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a good job on those, and we have a few to cover. So I'll keep us going to the next one, which is called the degree of permanence of the work relationship. And this one ultimately uh, looks at, like, is this a project based? Is it clearly defined in duration, or is this ultimately indefinite? And so I think where we look at it is, if somebody is indefinite, then you really have to ask yourself the question, like, is this truly a, like, contractor relationship, or is it an employee disguised
Yeah.
as a contractor?
Yeah, yeah, and full disclaimer, maybe I should have said this at the top. Like, we're not legal advice, right? We're just sharing information and giving our thoughts. When I think about the permanence piece too, I think definitely of that indefinite nature. But also, if you put in contractual things such as non-competes or those restrictive covenants, if you try to levy a restrictive covenant on a contractor, then to me that seems more like an employee arrangement. So, all right, cool. Then what's the next one?
Well, we talk about this one quite a bit when we talk about contractors, and usually this one in itself is often enough just to answer the question of, like, yeah, that's not how we work together. And I'm talking about the nature and degree of control. Now, the word control is, like really powerful. But in the sense of defining this relationship, what they're ultimately talking about is how much oversight, how much management, how hands-on is the employer with the contractor. And Joey, the example that I like to share often about control versus not control, like control is like most everyday employee manager employee business relationships, right? Where there's a lot of guidance and structure around how things are done and when they're done. But independent contractor relationship, I use the example of like a graphic designer.
Okay.
Right. With a graphic designer, you'd meet with them and say, if we were doing a logo, hey, I want you to please use these colors. I like this style. Here's inspiration. Uh, can we meet in 2 weeks to review your first draft? Right. So you give them guidance, but you're not managing all of the things that they're doing along the way. You're defining an end result. So yes, you'll meet and you'll calibrate, but everything that happens in between is totally up to that independent contractor. And that's when that's the difference between control and non-control from just kind of a visual standpoint.
Yeah. And taking that a little further too with the control pieces, does the worker does the worker control when they get the job done, right? So an independent
Yeah.
contractor might receive a scope of work and goals from a client, and then they can work at 2 in the morning for all they care.
Mhm.
But someone who is an employee, it is most likely that you would be dictating, where they complete the work. So, in your office, or if they have work from home privileges, and you would be dictating when they should be getting the work done, which would be during um, during work hours. It's not enough to just to say that a deadline creates nature and degree of control, but it is
Mhm.
sort of like you said, the process, the steps to completing it help determine whether it's an independent contractor or an employee.
Yeah.
Um, the next one is extent to which the work performed is an integral part of the business. Now, this one to me in ride share is like the biggie. This is like the $1 billion question, because you
Mhm.
have to say, do you have a rideshare platform without drivers? Do you have a rideshare business without drivers? Do you have a food delivery business without drivers? Um,
Yeah.
but let's maybe reel that in a little bit. And then of course, these are all subjective and relative. And again, these are this is not legal advice, but maybe you have a temporary CFO, and the CFO is doing integral work in the business, or I guess maybe better stated, because I can refer back to the list of California, that California has its own independent contractor law. Um, let's say you have like a an accountant, or you have a sales professional, or you have a market, these integral work functions. Um, you got to evaluate, of their daily tasks and responsibilities, are they so integral to moving the business forward that you wouldn't be able to function without what they do?
Mhm.
That one. And then what's the last one, Summer?
The last one is skill and initiative. And, ultimately, this one is considering whether the worker uses specialized skills to perform that work, and whether those skills contribute to what's called a business like initiative. So, when the worker brings specialized skills to a work relationship, um, that's not like the only thing, but, you want to really be looking at, like, is this worker dependent on training from the employer to do the work, or are they bringing their skills with them? And that's usually where, there's, when I'm having conversations with client, like, it leans one way or the other, right? If they're showing up and they have this knowledge and skill, and maybe They just need to use like a tool within your system to like execute on it. That's cool. But if you're bringing them in and you're teaching them how to do these things, that should be a big question mark.
Big question mark. So, as an example, you won't find Starbucks having independent contractors anytime soon because there's a special way that you have to make my vanilla latte. And, Chick-fil-A wouldn't have independent contractors because there's a special way that you have to make, the spicy chicken sandwich. Uh, so these are just examples that we're throwing out there. Again, not legal advice, nothing binding, just our thoughts and perspectives. But all of this is to maybe challenge you or to challenge you to think about your staffing plans and whether you have the full full clearance pathway forward to hire independent contractors, or if you really do need to hire as employees. And of course,
Mhm.
we can have those conversations with you. We offer prepaid HR consulting time. We offer monthly subscriptions. We're available, and we help companies walk through challenges like this in case by case scenarios. Some of you mentioned that this new guidance here, there is a listing that says, special context might come into play, or additional factors may be relevant. So we'll help you dig through those relevant factors and help you have the proper staffing plan for your business.
Sounds
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah, yeah. You know what? We went almost the whole show on this, and you know what? I think that that's okay because we've got about 3 minutes, and maybe we can just have this be the show focused on this new law because it is big. It is a space that we play in quite a bit for the size of companies that we reach. But kind of in like a parting thoughts question standpoint, we can jump into consultant corner and ask the question. Yeah, Summer, when should you start thinking about HR in your business? What's the right size? What's the right things happening in your business where you should invest in HR?
Well, it definitely depends on the business, but I would say that, for organizations that have the means to do so, they would definitely benefit from the very start. And it doesn't mean that they need to have a full-time person on staff, but I do strongly believe in the type of support that we provide being very flexible and very affordable for a business just starting out. Because I'll tell you what, when you hire that first employee, right? Or like we were talking about bringing on a contractor, if you don't get it right from the start, it can be a world of hurt down the road.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And I too agree that I call it the founder and the dream. I think that every founder with a dream should begin to have conversations about HR topics because you've got to know that your biggest line item expense as you grow your business is going to be talent and benefits. Those go neck and neck. So why wouldn't you start from day one thinking about how am I going to afford my business? How am I going to afford realizing my dream by focusing on HR, HR matters, you know, that. And then there's the idea of what type of work culture do you want and how do you ensure that you get it? How do people know that they're doing a good job in your organization? So how will you measure performance? Um, you know, should you be talked out of hiring your best friends because that typically ends badly? So, like, do you have an advisor who can help
Yeah.
you make thoughtful decisions that don't compromise your dream? So yeah, no matter the size of the business, I think you should start putting HR advice in your ears, whether it's standing meetings with a consultant like us, whether that's you might have a friend or colleague who you can buy coffee and pick their brain, but don't start a business without HR, because we have seen businesses scale to very nice levels of success. But what slows them down or hinders their growth is that they made some bad HR decisions along the way that they ultimately have to face a day of reckoning about. And that's never fun. So from day one, I think you should think about HR.
Absolutely. And I know that we've run really long on today's show, but Joey, is there anything that you wanted to add that we didn't cover so far?
Well, we could have gone 3 hours on this whole independent contractor thing because it's such a huge deal. I think there is the caveat of, you know, make sure you know your state's uh, guidance on independent contracting, as well as whatever states you have colleagues or workers in. Because
Mhm.
if you, for example, are headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, but you have contractors in Denver, Colorado, or Los Angeles, California, there are some variances that come into play, and you should know about it. So I'll just leave with that. What about you? You have any parting
Yeah,
thoughts?
I think yeah, you said exactly what I was going to say because I actually had a conversation with one of our clients yesterday who had a departing team member that they were talking about, as soon as she onboarded as an employee, they were going to bring her on as a contractor, and I was like, "Time out. Let's talk about this." And they didn't realize that first there was this new DOL rule, but that also they had to look at what state the individual was. So, meanwhile, they're thinking um, prior DOL rules, but then like failing to recognize, like, hold on, like there are 28 states that have more stringent criteria and what's called the ABC test, and then an additional 8 states that use a modified version of that. So, like, we have to look at this truly on a case by case basis. And I think that's the biggest takeaway that I wanted to share.
All right. All right. And that concludes this episode of While We Were Working. Thanks for being locked in and engaging with our content. If you enjoyed it, and we know you did because you reached the end, why don't you share it with some friends? Leave us a 5-star review wherever you grab this in audio form. Drop a comment, hit that like button, and subscribe on YouTube where you'll see our video. So until next time, see you, Summer, and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.